Hello, hello, hello. And I need to remove some things because otherwise I'm going to have playback. Hi, I'm Dr. Toomer. Thank you for joining me. I am just getting myself situated right now and hoping that the internet gremlins behave themselves today because I am doing a connection between a third party streamer and YouTube. So let's hope that they've been put to rest and we have a nice, smooth webcast today. So first what I'm going to do is remove some of this branding stuff so that you can see me and know who I am. Here I am. I'm Dr. Catherine Toomer. I am a family medicine and community health physician who founded health, wellness, and weight loss centers about 4 years ago. I also created a total whole you total weight loss program, which actually developed about 20 years ago. I just named it recently. And essentially what it was born from was my own struggles with weight loss and being overwhelmed and needing to change and needing a program to help me with that and not having one. And so, just out of trial and error and creating one for myself, I used it to lose 60 pounds. I've kept it off now for 20 years. And then realized other people needed that help as well because there still wasn't a whole lot out there that really addressed the whole person. And that's the biopsychosocial approach. Your biology, your psychology, your sociology, how you function with your family, how you function at work, how you feel about yourself, your moods, and how they affect your relationship to food, how your body reacts to food, and then your underlying health conditions that need to be addressed because many times those health conditions can derail weight loss and actually cause weight gain. So that's essentially what I do. So I'm going to push this back a little bit because it's taking up a lot of space. Okay. So what I'm here for today is to talk about three steps you can take to help maintain your New Year's resolutions. This is a time of year where everybody says, I'm going to make a change. I'm going to add something to my regimen. I want to get healthier. I want to lose weight. I want to exercise. I want to eat more vegetables. I want to get out of debt. I mean, whatever it is, we often use this time of year to make those declarations. And so, one of the things that requires that is habit, changing habits. And so, why are habits so important to me? Well, I'm just going to give you a little background of my story so that you know why and why I think this is so important. About 20 years ago, after years of gaining weight from the medical school and the stress of residency, eating like my husband after I got married, having two children in 3 years, I found myself very much overweight and insulin dependent diabetes. 1 month after my daughter was born, I went into congestive heart failure. And I realized very quickly that if I wanted to live to see my daughters grow up, I had to make some changes. But unfortunately, because of my heart condition, I couldn't exercise, so I had to be through food. I had to figure out a way of making changes. Now, I was overwhelmed. I was very depressed and anxious, scared. And when you're in that situation, it's very hard to stick to anything. Your motivation is affected. And that's what it takes often to change habits is determination and motivation. And when you're depressed, those are the first things that fly out of the window. And so it was really important for me to figure out ways that I could do that without overwhelming myself even more. So there had to be easy ways of changing, of creating habits. And so those are things that I've done for the last 20 years. And every time something needs to be fixed, I use the same process over and over again because it works. And so I'm going to talk about some of that today. And so we'll just go ahead and get started. So, what are habits? I mean, I know I said, three things, three steps to keeping your New Year's resolutions, but essentially what we're trying to do is create habits and keep them. So, what exactly are habits? Well, habits are activities that we habitually do because they reward us in some way. So, what we do is we create these things that we do in order to somehow make our lives more comfortable. Whether they actually do that or not is another story. But that's essentially what we do. There's things that fit into our lives, and that's why we do them that way. And so I'm just going to say a quick hello to a couple of people who've come in. Hello, Teacher Dee Dee and Antoinette. So I there's 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 some habits that we should keep and some that we should change. But what I'll talk about today is why it's so hard to change habits and why it doesn't have to be. There are ways that you can create healthier habits. There's ways that you can create the things that you want without it being so difficult, without it being such a chore. And so what I'm going to do right now actually is I'm going to stop these banners going around the bottom because it's kind of distracting for me. And I'm going to hide that. There we go. I think that's a little bit better. All right. So how do we make habits easier? Well, the first thing you have to do with anything, you have to figure out what the cause is, what the problem, cause of the problem. And so the cause of the problem often is what I call the three D's: denial, doubt, and derailment. Those are the three things that determine whether we can or cannot, or do not create new habits that are healthy. And so when focusing on those and understanding what makes changing habits hard, then it makes it easier to counter those things and makes it easier then to create the habits you want. And so the number one, denial. It's very, very important to recognize what it is that you need to change. All too often, when talking to various clients, talking to various people, people are often in denial of what it is they actually need to change. I get things like, I'm going to start exercising more because I want to be healthier, so I'm going to exercise. And I'll say, well, if you want to be healthier, shouldn't you quit smoking? Oh, no, I don't need to quit smoking. If I just exercise, I'll be fine. Well, that is denial in the ultimate sense. Picking one thing that is really inconsequential, or I mean, it does make you healthier, obviously, to exercise. But if you're doing something else that's a lot more detrimental to your health, it makes more sense to focus on that than something else. Another again is I'm going to eat more vegetables. I want to eat, healthier, and I'm going to add, vegetables to every meal. I'm going to eat a salad every day. And it's like, well, are you also going to stop eating so much sugar? Well, no, if I eat vegetables, I'll be fine. Oh, well, sugar is up there as something that you should probably get rid of also. So, trying to find the things that really work so that the habit, if you're going to create a habit, at least let it work for you and do exactly what you want it to do without So choosing them wisely, or choosing your options wisely, is part of that. So not being in denial and understanding what it is that really that your goal is, and then realizing what it is you actually want to change to get that to that goal. But that takes being realistic, and also being very, oh gosh, I'm blanking on the word. Also being very aware of what it is that it takes. And so often what you'll see, and often what we do, is we repeat the same actions over and over again, expecting a different result. So every year at around New Year's, we'll say we're going to do this. And of course, it lasts about a month. It goes away. And then again, we try it again the following New Year. So maybe there's something not quite right with that option. And so I'll talk a little bit more later about how we can change some of those things. So, another example, things I see often, especially when it comes to repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is with weight loss. I'll have someone tell me, I know exactly how to lose weight. I've done it before. And I was like, well, then what happened? Well, then I stopped doing what I was supposed to do, and then it all came back. Well, if it's a habit that's easy to keep, it shouldn't stop, and it shouldn't come back. So there's still something missing in that. And so we'll talk a little bit more about how to identify, how to maintain, and how to keep your changes going. So the best way to start with that is working backwards. Decide what you want to happen, and then figure out what step comes before that. And then the step before that, and the step before that. And you break it down to the point where you decide, what change do I need to make in my life? What am I doing in my life that's countering the change that I want to make? You break it down to the smallest component. And for example, if your knees hurt, you have joint pain, first thing to think about is, well, why do your knees hurt? Do they hurt because they're carrying around extra weight? Do they hurt because you had an injury? Do they hurt because you have some inflammatory process? And so you think, okay, well, if my knees hurt, what's the step before? Well, either it's reduce inflammation, increase mobility, or decrease the amount of work that my knees have to do. And so then the next step below that is, do I need to lose weight? Do I need to see my doctor to figure out if there's something that I need to do in order to reduce inflammation, like not eating sugar, or other things that cause inflammation? And then you just keep breaking it down to the point where it's like, okay, what am I doing in my life that's countering what it is that I want to happen? And start from there. But it's very important not to try and guess. If you know someone or anyone who has information that can help you create healthy habits, or at least identify which habits you should have in order to help with the process that you want to happen, then ask. Often what I see is someone thinking they're doing the right thing, and that's good that they're determined, but you want your efforts to be worth something. You want them to at least do what you want them to do. If you're going to put effort into something, I mean, make it work for you, you know? So, so that's denial. You want to make sure you understand what it is that really needs to change in order for you to get the result you want. Number two is doubt. Doubt, doubting yourself, doubting that something will work, not being really clear, being skeptical that what you're trying to do, whatever change that you think you should make, is going to work. Often it's because it's not your process, it's someone else's, that they're telling you this is what you need to do, and you're not fully convinced. That's fine. The other is, if you're doubtful, it will chip away at your resolve. When you know that there's something you want to change, but you doubt if you're capable of doing it, you're not going to. So it needs to be something that you're confident that you can carry out, and therefore it can't be something huge. It can't be a huge jump. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, because often what happens, we make these grand declarations. Oh, I'm going to eat a salad every day. Oh, I'm going to run a mile. I'm going to do yoga, and stretch, for an hour every morning. And what happens if we don't continue those activities, or we don't even get started with the things that we want to do, we mark it as a failure and we internalize that failure. And so what happens is that the more those things happen, the more those events happen, the more things that you try to do and you don't succeed at them, the next time you try, the first thing you say, well, you've done this 10 times before and it never worked. Well, probably if you're going to do it again, then it may not work either. But if you do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, well, we know what that's considered, right? So it's really important then, if you're going to do something that you were not able to maintain before, then don't try it again, change it. That's a good time to start thinking, well, maybe there's something else I should be doing instead. And because you need to believe that you can do it in order for you to be successful. You have to believe that you can do it, and you need to believe that you deserve the change, the result that you want. And so, again, doubt. We've got to eliminate doubt, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later, about how you can do that. The third D is derailment. So we got three D's: denial, doubt, and then derailment. They all overlap a little bit. They're not distinct lines, but with derailment, essentially what it is, it starts off with a couple of things: fear of success. Why would you be afraid of success? Well, when you make a change and you're successful in that change and you get the result that you want, what excuse do you have for not changing everything that needs to go? Really? What excuse do you have? If you could stop smoking cold turkey, then, if you decide that you don't want to scream at your children, then what's the excuse? Whatever it is that you feel is that you need to change. You just need to understand that being successful in one area can actually let fear creep in, because there's other things that you need to change, and so you tend to derail or sabotage yourself once you've reached that goal. And when you realize that you have what it takes to make the changes that you want, suddenly it can be very overwhelming when you realize all the other things that you want to change and that you haven't. Starting to snowball upwards, or as someone once said to me, setting yourself up for success can be a bit overwhelming. And so what happens is that we get scared, and then we start doing things that undermine what it is that we want to achieve, or what that we have achieved. One of the ways that we do this is by rewarding ourselves in a way that counters the goal we're trying to make. And you've seen this often. I've done it. I know you probably have done it. You lose some weight. You decide, okay, I need to lose weight. So I'm going to lose weight. And then once I've lost it, or lost a few pounds, I reward myself with a cookie or a piece of cake or something else. And when we do that, it's very clear that what we're doing is countering the very goal we're trying to make. That is a very good indication of derailment, because what can happen is those rewards become more frequent, then they become the actual habit itself. And so you've undermined and eliminated the good habit and replaced it with the reward. And so that's one of the reasons why I don't really like cheat days in diets, mainly because it is, again, rewarding with the very thing that you're trying to counter. And it works for some people. However, there are others who then become very much, they only focus on the reward, and then they see everything else as a chore. And of course, if you see what you're doing as a chore, eventually you'll start to undermine it. And so, and also you don't want to associate your success with pain, because that's essentially what happens when, if you reward yourself with the very thing that you're trying to change, the change itself then becomes a chore. It becomes the negative, and you don't want that to happen if you want to make permanent changes. So, so the first question you ask yourself if you think you might be derailing is the reward for the change something that derails that change? And so I'm going to repeat that, because this is probably what I see the most. Is the reward for the change you're trying to make an action that counters that very change? And so if the answer is yes, then change the reward. Don't change the action. If you're doing it and you're able to maintain it, keep doing it, but make sure that when you reward yourself, use some other method. So, an example, instead of eating cake when you lose some weight, just say, okay, if my size goes down, I'm going to buy myself something nice. For me, I like candles. I tend to reward myself with things that smell good, or with a bouquet of flowers. I don't know. I just like pretty things. So I'm just like, if I'm feeling good and I've done something and I've accomplished something, I buy myself flowers. And so, don't gain weight with flowers. So, or whatever else I'm trying to do. So that is, so that's one of the ways of trying to change a habit and recognizing. So again, denial, doubt, derailment. The other thing about derailment is, if you do something that's so extreme and affects the people around you, you don't even have to derail yourself. Other people will do it for you. They'll get sick of you doing something. So if you're, suddenly decide that, say for example, you want to save some money. Excuse me, my nose is itching a little bit. You want to save some money. And you think, okay, where do I spend the most? Well, I spend a lot when I eat out. So how many days a week do you eat out? So if you eat out as a family and you do things as a family and you're eating out, and then you decide, okay, I need to save some money, or we need to save some money, so we're going to stop eating out. And you suddenly go from eating out 5 days a week and you tell everyone, we're going to stop this altogether. We're not eating out at all. You're going to get a lot of complaints from your family, more than likely, because those are things that they probably look forward to. So you need to recognize that what you do affects other people. And if it affects other people too greatly, they will figure out ways of undermining the change you're trying to make. And so a good example would be, so create goals that are realistic. And so if you do those things that are realistic and they're in ways that don't bother other people, then you're less likely to get resistance. And one of the ways of doing that is to do it in small increments. So if I decide that I don't want to eat out every single day because it costs a lot of money, of course, we're in the middle of COVID, so I don't even know why I'm using that as an example, but just let's just say we're not in COVID and we used to eat out a lot. Anyway, so instead of stopping altogether, what you do is you start one day. and then 2 days, and then 3 days. Um, I'm trying to think. Oh, sorry about this. I see somebody can't hear or see anything. Okay. Well, if you all can hear me and see me, can you just kind of say yes? Because I think we're having some difficulty with, and based on the comments, I think I can because I'm seeing some of the things that I've been saying kind of running along there. So sorry to interrupt all in the middle, but I just wanted to make sure that there isn't some issue. So it looks like there might be, okay. So So it looks like it may just be a problem, Antoinette. I'm sorry, but this will be recorded, and so it will end up on the on my YouTube channel, so you'll be able to see it once it's done, and I'll let her know this when I'm finished. So, so I lost my my train of thought, but it's okay. I'll get right back on track. So when doing things, you want to do that in small increments. And so the way to do that then is if you know you're out, you want to eat out, you want to stop, make changes like one day at a time. So for example, you eat out 5 days a week, 4 days a week, drop it to a day. Instead of eating out on Tuesday, change your theme at home to Taco Tuesday. Instead of going to the local grill, make a day of the week a burger day at home. So what you do is instead of just removing something, you replace it with something else. And if you do it in like just one day a week and then 2 days a week, and when that becomes pretty routine, you do 3 days a week, and that becomes pretty routine, and you do 4 days a week. By the time you eased into not eating out at all, everyone's gotten used to it because it wasn't a shock to your system. It wasn't a shock to their system. It wasn't a big adjustment because you did it in small increments. One of the things, stories I like to tell is always ask the question, how do you boil a frog? I know that sounds kind of weird, but essentially, frogs are cold-blooded animals. When you change their temperature, they either adjust or they avoid the temperature. So if you put a frog anywhere near boiling water, they'll immediately try to jump out. They'll try to get away from it. However, if you put a frog in cold water and you increase the temperature by half a degree and wait, they'll adjust to that temperature. Then increase it again by half a degree. And you just keep doing that. And by the time the water boils, the frog's gotten used to the different changes of temperature and doesn't even notice that the water's boiling. So it's kind of a gruesome way of discussing how to make changes, but that's essentially what we do. If we make small changes over time, we don't feel it. And I think part of what I talked about earlier about habits being things that reward us, if we make huge changes, that's the opposite of reward. That's punishment. So do it in small increments and keep track. Now, one of the things that I will talk about is actually how to do this. So, one of the things is to create realistic goals. And in order to create realistic goals, you need to make sure there's not something underlying. There isn't some issue that needs to be addressed first. It's all good and well to want to lose weight, but if you don't know if you're diabetic, you don't know if you have a thyroid condition, you don't know if your hormones or your muscle mass is low, if you're male, if you have low testosterone, If you don't know any of those things, no matter what other changes you make, it's going to be difficult for you to reach your goal if weight loss is it. If you are trying to save money, you're trying to get out of debt. If you don't understand the issues behind emotional spending or knowing what kind of spender you are, and don't address those issues, then everything you try to do to save money is going to be a chore because you may save it in one area, but then you'll end up spending it in another because the issue itself has not been addressed. It's not the spending, it's the cause of the spending. And it's the same thing with the relationships, whatever it is, whatever you're trying to change, that's probably a symptom, not the cause. So look for the cause of what it is that that's causing the issue, and then address that. And then, and I'll talk about how you can do that. And one of the ways of doing that is called habit stacking. When I was trying to make changes, when I did make changes, I was just too tired to really focus on anything that was just too difficult. And I needed those changes to be relatively easy. And so one of the things that I learned, and I didn't even know about habit stacking, this is something I learned later when I was doing more studying. If you tie a change that you want into something that you already do, you're more likely to maintain it. And one way of doing that is whatever you decide you want to change, determine what it is that's keeping you from doing it or what you think is keeping you from doing it. So, for example, you want to exercise 30 minutes a day, but you tell yourself, I just don't have time. I don't have energy. I don't have, the space. I don't have something. Whatever the excuse is, take that excuse and break it down. So if time is your issue, create a time log. Every 15 minutes, write down what you're doing. Do that for a few days. And what you'll see is that there are some activities that you're doing that either you can eliminate and use that time for something else, or there's a whole block of time that you're doing one thing that you could be doing two things. Good example is if you know you watch the news every single day, if you know that you sit and you watch television for an hour, if you know that you talk on the phone for an hour to your sister or whoever, use that time to exercise. Do squats while you're talking. Do walk on a treadmill while you're watching the news. Try to figure out where you can kill two birds with one stone, or even three birds with one stone. You can do the same with food. If food is one of the issues that you're trying to adjust, you want to eat more vegetables. Well, if you're a meat eater trying to say, I'm going to become a vegetarian, or if you don't like salad, saying, I'm going to eat a salad every day, if you can't stand zucchini, trying to cook zucchini for your family or for yourself is not going to work. So what you do is whatever you write, keep a food diary, look at the pattern of what you're eating, and determine where, if you're already eating at a particular time or particular meal, throw a vegetable in there instead of replacing something. Just add it. And in small, and then you're going to probably get some resistance, especially if you have small children, because, unless they just happen to like vegetables. But there are ways of doing things where, you can blend things up and hide them in things and sauces and all the rest. And so, or for what I do, if there's a vegetable I don't particularly like, I throw cheese on it. But that's just me. So there's different ways of trying to combine things. Spending is another thing. If you're trying to save money, keep a log of how much money you spend and then see where you're leaking funds. And then it will help highlight, because we don't really remember things as well as we think we do. So if you try to just say, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what I'm doing, more than likely we'll rationalize things away. We'll forget things that actually happened. We'll forget that handful of potato chips we grabbed on our way out of the house. We'll forget that, $10 we spent or, that piece of cake or whatever. So keeping logs also keep you accountable. So if you make small changes, it's not a shock to your system and it's not a shock to people around you. And so you're more likely to not derail yourself, and they aren't going to derail you either. And so, again, habit stacking, keeping logs help you determine where your leaks are. And that's food leaks, money leaks, sleep deprivation leaks. The other thing that happens when you habit stack, you tend not to make unrealistic expectations of yourself. So if you know that you wake up at noon, trying to tell yourself you're going to get up at 7 o'clock to exercise is probably not very realistic. Because what will happen if you don't get up at 7, you won't exercise. And if you don't exercise, you're probably not going to wake up then. So fit in your day what it is you want to do based on the habits you already have. But trying to change habits completely that are out of range of what you're already doing is just not, it sets you up for failure. And then again, that goes back to the doubt because it just feeds into that doubt again. So, what you look for are your fits. And so if time is an issue, then look for where you can fit something in using a time log. If money is an issue, you do the same. If you're scared of the change that you want to make, use accountability groups. Create a group of friends that will keep you accountable. So nothing too extreme. Use your present habits and add to them. So another example that I've often used is I hear people say, I'm going to give up something. Giving up things are good, but you need to replace it with something else because otherwise it's just punishment. If it's something that you've done, if it's a habit you've already created because it's something that rewards you, you need to replace it with something else that rewards you also. Otherwise, you'll just go back to your old habits. So if old habits die hard, don't kill them. So I'm going to say that again. If old habits die hard, just don't kill them. Add to them, improve them in small increments, and attach a good thing to something that you're already doing. So, so pretty much, I say all this to say, keep it real, be realistic, keep it small, and attach it to something big. And make sure that your reward is not counter to the change that you're trying to make. And those are the 3 steps to keeping habits, keeping your resolutions, and essentially making the changes that you want. So now that is my talk. So if you have questions that you'd like to present to me, I can read through some of the comments. And let me see. Yes, you're right, Carice. Believe that you deserve the change. That is so true. But that's for everything in life. Believing in yourself is the first step often to getting the things that you want. And if you can't get yourself to believe it, get someone to help you believe it. Let me see. So teacher Deidre says, wash hands, wash hands, wash hands. Okay. So one of the ways of doing that is look and see what you do through the day that you do on a regular basis. And then just say you're going to wash your hands before or wash your hands after every single time. One of the things that I do, for example, is I do squats while I'm brushing my teeth. Or I do squats right before I brush my teeth and then I do squats after. I tie them together because it's something I do every single day anyway. And it's something I need to do every single day. And so I had, just knowing that, squats, if you have to do only one exercise for the rest of your life, squats are the best because they activate the largest muscle group of your body. And so they affect your metabolism. So that's what I focus on. If I'm going to get any exercise in, it's going to be a squat. And so I tie it to an activity that I do every day. Another example is if I I considered myself a very bad procrastinator because what would happen, I'd wake up, I'd check Facebook, I'd check Instagram, I'd check Twitter, and the next thing I know it, I'm, 30 minutes late, and then I'm rushing. And one of the things, if anyone who's worked with me knows, that time management is really important in getting anything done. If you rush too much, your cortisol levels go up because you're stressed. That derails weight loss. It's one of those non-food weight gain things that happen. And so what I started doing, instead of beating myself up for, you know, going on Instagram or whatever I want to do in that morning, I just started waking up a half hour earlier. So I got 30 minutes, 30 minutes. So my habit of going on, social media in the morning just to relax is just my way of easing into the day, seeing things that are funny, but without, derailing the rest of my day by changing that one thing, as opposed to saying I'm going to give up social media in the morning. Well, that's just not going to happen because I enjoy it. So give myself the time instead. So if you have any questions, you can start posting them. I don't like to stop in the middle of talking to read questions, so I just kind of kept plowing through. Not to mention the fact this is actually probably my first time doing anything like this. So, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot. And if you have any questions, you can post them now. If not, then, you know, um, I guess we're done. Any questions? Yes to the no punishment zone. That is absolutely true. Um, well, if no one has any questions, then we're done. And if you think of any later, you can contact me on social media, Catherine Harmon Toomer, MD. And or you can also join my Facebook group where I give a lot of this information as it comes up for people who have questions, and that my Facebook group is Whole You Total Weight Loss, and I'm also here on YouTube, and I'm on Instagram as Dr. underscore Toomer. So, just find me. And, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. Or if you have other topics that you'd like to hear about, I'd love to share my information and go from there. All right. Well, thank you so, so much for joining me. I really, really enjoyed this, and I hope you did too. All right, good night.